Welcome to Disabled Expectations. When you're a dad raising a child with a disability, nothing is as you planned. These are the raw, honest stories of dads whose lives changed the day they heard a diagnosis and who continue to show up, adapt, and fight for their families every day. This isn't about lowering expectations, it's about redefining them. I'm Andy, and this is Disabled Expectations. Well, thanks for joining us. This is Disabled Expectations, and my guest today is a good one. We got Mike VanderWoude. Love this guy. The best golfer, simulator golfer I have ever met in person. Mike, thanks for joining us.
I think you meant the most enthusiastic simulator golfer, not the best.
It was crazy how good you were. Like, I mean, you're hitting the ball to the screen and you were making everyone look silly. So do you golf in person a lot? Is that?
Yeah, I get about 50 to 60 rounds a year, which still doesn't make me good. Whoa. It just makes me enthusiastic. And it kind of plays into what we're going to talk about. It's like, there's no boat, no cottage. I got one hobby and a relatively introverted wife. So with a bunch of kids at home and one of them having special needs, that's an outlet I can get away with, so to speak.
Right. No, that's a good one. And you typically aren't doing that alone, right? I mean,
right. Yeah. I probably golf with the same 10 guys over and over, and then mix some other people in and outings and try to make some new friends every now and again.
That's fun. Have you ever thrown a club like into the water?
I'll let you ask some of my golf buddies about that. Into the water? No.
Yeah. Like
everywhere else.
A putt. That's so great. I used to work at a couple of golf courses in my younger days, and those were some fun times doing some maintenance. And oh man,
recently at the mines on the west side of Grand Rapids, I pulled somebody's wedge out of a tree.
Wow.
Near the tee box. So can't really explain that guy
right.
or gal.
Things didn't go as planned there.
But the wedge doesn't really come out near the tee box, and it was in a tree near the tee box.
Wow. All right. I love it. Well, tell me about your family.
Yeah.
How many kids you have? What are we talking about?
Well, we're the VanderWoudes. I have a great wife, and our oldest will be 14 in February. He is typical, or he ain't normal, but he's typical.
14, yeah, that makes sense.
He'll be home here any minute. He's just at the high school basketball game, and then we have Evan, who's kind of our subject matter. He turned 12 yesterday. We'll talk about him, and then in our case, we have a 2-year-old foster boy, which that's a story of its own for a different podcast. But that's us. So us and 3 boys, and
okay.
They're a lot of fun.
How long have you been married?
08. So I guess we're going on 17 years here.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
In a row. Yeah. Good job.
All in a row. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think you have a lot to offer. A lot of other dads that have kids with disabilities, myself being one. I think your story is going to be impactful for many. So I was thinking we could just start. I mean, your story with Evan really starts early, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yep.
Yeah. So if we just want to like cannonball into the deep end.
Yep.
Walk us through the beginning.
Yeah. So my wife, Sarah, her first pregnancy with Tice wasn't the smoothest. She was bed rested at least 6 weeks or so as that was getting, late.
Okay.
But made it to about 38 weeks, and we had him, and he's healthy and all that. with Evan, early on, we had no reason to think anything would be different. In hindsight, I recall, you know how like for some women at the end of a normal pregnancy, they just look rough, like you feel bad for them. You know, they're so, you know, you just hope, hey, we can get this over with so she can start to feel better. Well,
yeah.
In hindsight, it'd be Christmas of 2012. We had some photos that I saw later. Evan's due date was approximately April 15 of 13. And when I saw those Christmas photos, I was alarmed because that look, that discomfort, you know, some swelling, was all there. But she was like 23 weeks. So what happened, just to get into the meat of the story, on New Year's Day of 2013, we were sitting around watching bowl games. She took a nap, and when she got up from the nap, she was crying. She was in pain, and I'm like, you know, what's going on? And you know, I knew that first pregnancy wasn't so smooth, but I didn't have any reason to think any worse than that. So I think I dropped her off down at Spectrum. I guess that would be the Butterworth campus, and then took our 1-year-old to Grandma and Grandpa. Came back on I think this was I forget what night of the week was, but it was New Year's Day. And when I came back, they were talking about admitting her. And you know, she was 24, 25 weeks at that point. And that was a little bit alarming.
For sure.
And then also we were kind of waiting around, and it was like, well, what are we doing? Like, are they going to admit you? Are they not? Like, you know, there's a 1-year-old over at Grandma and Grandpa's. Like, we got to figure some things out. So they admitted her January 1. Well, there were some meetings the next few days, literally with medical specialties we had never heard of.
Oh, wow.
You know, you haven't heard of the neonatologist. Right. Why would you, right? You know about your OBGYN and who's going to deliver your baby, but pardon my English, what the hell is a neonatologist?
Yeah.
This guy comes in, he's very serious, and I had come from work. I had to keep working. And I showed up, and my in-laws, Sarah's parents, they looked alarmed and frightened, and I'm like, what did I just walk into? So they, you know, it was, hey, here's the neonatologist. He's going to talk about some things. And they like pushed me into a chair. I'm like, oh boy, what is this? So he started educating us and talking about our son who didn't even have a name yet.
Man.
And basically that there's a high likeliness that he's coming soon. And I'm like, can you repeat that, please? The goal was to get her to the 26-week mark. So first weird and sort of stunning moment is coming up right away. At that point, we're talking about survival. You know, we're not 34 weeks. We're not past 30. We're at 25, and they wanted to get her at 26 because if I recall correctly, at 26 weeks, the likelihood of survival was 90%.
Okay.
So coming from a sports background, I'm thinking I got the 90% free throw shooter on the line here. I like our chances.
Right.
My wife started crying immediately. Not coming from that sports background, I think she went the other way and thought, wow, there's a 10% chance our child might not make it. Right. So that was kind of a stunning, like, sobering moment right there. So we sort of walked through that day by day. I mean, one day at a time. On the 5th, if I recall, it was a Saturday. My oldest sister and her husband came down to the hospital just to see us. And I had my oldest, and I hated it at the time. I regretted it the moment he was gone, but I sent my 1-year-old home with grandma and grandpa. And their thinking was like, go out for dinner with your sister, relax, go home, get some sleep. I guess fortuitous would be the word, but 6 o'clock. So what we were doing is we'd both try to sleep. I was sleeping in an empty house. And in the morning when we'd wake up, we would just text each other instead of calling, because if she's sleeping in the hospital, I sure as heck don't want to wake her up. So I texted her, hey, how's it going? I can head down soon. And I fired up the shower, and I knew to take my phone into the bathroom. It starts ringing, and I'm like half showered, and she's like, it sounds like this baby's coming pretty soon. And I'm like, whoa.
So she had been admitted for 5 days at this point.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
And we knew we had sort of a little warning. They were trying to get her to 26 weeks. So this was essentially 26 weeks minus 1 day at this point. So I'm alarmed. I get dressed. I named him in a text message. Sorry, choking on that a little bit, but
yeah,
that's what it was. I named him in a text message. We hadn't talked about names. We thought we had 4 months to go. So,
right.
We live in the city of GR, and there I am going down Fuller and Michigan Ave, 75 miles an hour. So we get there, and a lot of it's a blur. There's a few moments that I can remember, and I think, fortunately, I can't remember 2/3 of it. Just to push through the hard. So now we're in a delivery room, which I think was an ordinary delivery room, although I'd only been in one once before. And, they're doing emergency C-section. Next thing I know, there is the tiniest thing that you've ever seen in an isolette 3 feet to my left. Isolette, most people would call it an incubator, right? So it has a top and all this medical technology. And like, I see my kid in there, and I'm like, and he's the size of my hand.
Oh man.
1 pound, 5 ounces, looked like a little alien. I'd happily share the photo with you sometime. You could even publish it on this if you choose. And so, wow, like shocked, stunned, no idea what to do. Sarah's kind of doing okay.
So it's normal pregnancy, no C-section?
Well, this was an emergency C-section.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, I missed that.
This was a moment that you never think about. You hope you're never going to have. At some point, you have to prioritize the life of a young mother who has a 1-year-old. You have to be willing to take that chance. You do not have a lot of time to think about that.
Right.
I don't wish these decisions on anybody, but they happen. So I've got my little baby off to my left, my wife to the right. I'm freaking out. I'm shaking. 2 things happened that are just part of the story. One is I somehow stopped shaking to take that birth photo. I have this one photo of him. Just it would freak some people out if they saw it. And again, I'm willing to share it. And then I actually did cut the cord. I mean, they see this guy shaking like a leaf, and they hand me scissors. Like, so that worked out. Then the next thing that you never think you're going to have to decide happens. So the demeanor of it was our typical OBGYN, who was going to deliver the baby anyway, who delivered our first one. So it wasn't a neonatal. I bet they had one in the room. Can't prove it, but she sticks her head up and she's like, "Do you want to stay with your wife or go with your child?" I'm like,
boy, yeah.
And I can't imagine what I looked like. I probably looked like hell. because then they encouraged me to go with Evan. So there's, I think, 10 to 12 nurses, could have been medical people in all their hazmat suits, and me and mine, not really a hazmat suit, but weaving through what turned out to be the old hallways of Butterworth, because you go from the Helen DeVos building, which is that oval tower, into the old part, and so we're going through, and so I will remember this beyond the day that I die. Just following this procession of my kid and all these people and it was like, wow. So they get into a NICU room, and in this case, it was the pod variety, meaning there could be up to like 8 kids in there. I didn't know anything about any of these. We ended up spending most of our time there in our own private room. Took about 30 days, but so I'm sitting there, I'm just completely and utterly bewildered. And they're all surrounding Evan, doing what they got to do on him. I have no idea what's happening. They could have been telling me, I don't know. But I noticed at some point, 2 of the nurses each grabbed me by one shoulder. I'm kind of a big dude. And they started to like lean me back. I'm like, what are they doing? Well, another nurse had snuck a recliner up behind me, and they just pushed me into it. Yeah. So like I'm off my feet. I'm just watching this whole thing unfold. Can't say I remember a single thing about the rest of that day. Wow. But we were off. I think we had some reason initially to be encouraged. I mean, he was alive. So start with that. Then eventually we, none of it was normal, but things started to normalize a little bit, and he started to grow. He actually shrinks a little bit at first. I think he went from 1.5 ounces to even a little lower, and then started to grow.
It's so hard to even comprehend.
It is. Yeah. Don't try. I mean,
when you say as big as your hand, it's just like, it's powerful. Just that image,
Yeah. So tiny, so tiny. So that's the number that always shocks people. He was in that NICU. That might be some kind of record, or at least might be a record for a kid that survived. I don't remember a lot of 2013, and that's okay. I think and if we end up talking about therapy a little bit, that'll come back. But, he had all kinds of complications and so forth, medical concerns, obviously, 1 pound, 5 ounces. And he just started to grow, and our world was very much turned upside down. But that's what happened. So he turned 12 yesterday.
Yeah, that's exciting. How do you handle, this is kind of off topic real quick. How do you handle birthdays with Evan? Are they like exciting for you? Are they hard? Are they sad? Are they, where do you fall with birthdays?
This one yesterday was nice and easy. In the past, oh man, yeah, they would, there was a flashback type of phenomenon, and often for some reason that kid has been hospitalized around the new year a lot. So it also so it kind of like throws it in our faces a little bit, like, oh, here we are back at Helen DeVos.
Right.
But for the most part, each year we go by and it's like, oh, I can't believe that was 8 years ago. I can't believe that was 10 years ago. Like 12. Yeah. Like he's going to be a teenager.
Yeah.
You've met him. He's very childlike. He's not a typical 12-year-old, but yeah. So birthdays are getting better.
Okay. So what was life like after the first week of the NICU, how did you guys handle the schedule of 11 months, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you didn't start and be like, okay, I thought about it. This is what we're going to do. This is going to be the best option for us. And no, you were like,
But,
just going day by day, like you said. How did
yeah.
you guys end up handling that? Because, when Briella was born, we were a little over 2 weeks, and I thought that was a long time,
In the NICU?
in the NICU. And,
2 weeks. Nice job.
and, it's funny. We can laugh, right? It's okay to laugh about that.
Please.
Yeah.
Please.
So just trying to wrap my mind around how you and your wife handled that schedule. Was it both of you all the time there? Was it,
No.
back and forth? Did you have to keep working? Like, give us some of those details.
Yeah. At that time, I had to keep working.
Gotcha.
We had taken she had worked in insurance sales prior to that. And this really, we didn't know yet, but that was the end of that. She hasn't worked in a traditional job since. Fortunately, my real estate career has made that work out. That at that moment, I mean, I had no ability to not work.
Gotcha.
I learned in hindsight that the work might have saved me.
Wow.
Fortunately, both of our families are from West Michigan, so everybody was here.
Okay.
So there was a lot of pulling together, and helping care for a 1-year-old.
Yeah, you have a 1-year-old too.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So he turned 2 like 6-7 weeks later, but so we got a lot of help there. My wife has like 60 cousins, and a couple of them were primarily spending time with Tice in addition to her parents and some other people as needed. The NICU just kind of became her full-time thing. She was there, I'd say, an average of 8 hours a day. You can have guests, but they do not want you to sleep in the NICU. They don't want you to stay overnight. They don't give you that option.
As parents or as a guest?
Correct, as parents.
What?
Yep. With the pediatric ICU, which we've been in plenty of times, there you can stay overnight, but in the NICU, that was not a thing.
Whoa.
So it was much like an 8-hour shift. We'd get up in the morning, she'd figure out what Tice was doing, and then she'd head down and I'd head to work. And so, I work as a real estate broker, which is an independent type of thing. And I worked on a team at the time, so the team could help pick up slack where needed.
Yeah.
But I could come and go to some extent. If I had appointments, obviously, or whatever, or meetings, I'd be at those, but then I could go in and out of the hospital. So there were probably days where I might have gone 2 or 3 times. Or sometimes I'd go for as little as 5 minutes. Sometimes, or I'd go for an hour or 2 where I could. I'm grateful to her that she could do that all that time there. I'm not sure I could have held up.
Yeah, the hospital life is not a gig you sign up for. It takes a special person to be able to do what your wife has done, for sure.
And she had some recovery of her own to do. So, in a normal instance, she would have had, maternity leave and, let the body heal and all that. And so, I guess that sort of went on while she was just in a hospital with our kid.
How do you feel like you guys handled the leaving at night? Was that hard, or was that like a good thing that you were forced to? I mean, how did you? It just seems like, because we had our own private room from the get-go, and we
got one about a month later. So it turned out that one of our favorite neonatologists at the time, because you really learn your people, right? You got your set of nurses, and you got your You got
Right.
some doctors you like the most, and our
Yeah.
neonatologist actually knew some family members. So, boop, a month later, we had a private room, and then we kept
Okay.
it for 10 more months. But for a while, we were there in those pods of up to 8 kids, and that was a little weird itself because you're seeing kids and families come and go. So like
Right.
a 2-week stay for some kid across the room, we'd be like, "Oh, good luck to you guys. Go get them." And there were tons of
Yeah.
those, even a few
Yeah.
people we knew. So like we had some other
Man.
friends. I won't say their names or anything, but they had some triplets, and we got to know them in there a little better. And even they cycled through. They had, of their triplets, one of them had a much harder time than the other two, which kind of kept them there.
Okay.
And so we got to know them a little bit, but then eventually they were home. We knew another family in there that ended up losing their child, and that was like when that happened, we couldn't even talk about it. Like we both knew that child had passed away, and it was like,
yeah,
we've spoken very little of it to this day.
Right. That hits on a whole nother level.
Yep.
For sure.
So reroute me back to the question, because I feel like I wandered off.
No, I was just curious because not a lot of people can, first of all, comprehend or really relate to 11 months in the NICU. And so I was just trying to get into
biggest
your
number
head.
I've ever heard for a kid that survived.
Yeah, that is, I mean, it's awesome, right? But that comes with a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that comes from being there that long. So I was just trying to
toll.
Yeah, I mean, besides eating like really good food from the hospital, it's that was a joke. That's garbage. Coffee's bad. Food's bad.
Yeah, that one place that's owned and run by the hospital, boy, it wasn't then what it is now, but they were okay. And then you had, and I want to bring up the bridge across Michigan Ave.
Yeah.
You had Qdoba and a smash burger. I think that's gone now.
Really?
And a Starbucks
I guess I didn't realize, since we're only like 3 years in Grand Rapids, I didn't realize that's been there that long.
Yeah. So that the day-to-day was actually parking in that building across Michigan and then coming up to the third floor. And if you wanted that Starbucks, Zoop, and the Qdoba and the other place, you're on the first floor. And so we'd go there, and people in our lives gave us countless gift cards just so we didn't have to think about that.
Good.
Yeah, that was nice. Kind of a lifesaver. But that bridge, what you asked about is how was it leaving? That bridge over Michigan Street in Grand Rapids, the way I would describe it is, and I'll have to push through this a little bit, but every possible human emotion you could possibly experience, we would have on that bridge, and usually alone, because we had 2 cars. We weren't necessarily leaving or coming together. So you're walking up that bridge to see your kid, and you're excited, but you're also scared. And then leaving, it's like, I got to leave my kid again 300 times.
Right.
But, hey, I'm going home. I'm going to see my other kid, and I'm going to get some sleep. And or if I had to go back to work or something, I had to really prepare for that. So, but every emotion that a human can have, I think, was had on that bridge.
Wow.
So
do you still have some of those emotions, like to this day, when you drive by or you have to go there for checkups and stuff? Is it like that the word nowadays is triggered? Do you ever get triggered with that?
A little bit. I mean, I'm never going to forget that bridge. It's not as intense. But walked over it thousands of times, during the, toughest times in life. And it's like, you felt everything. in that moment.
Uh,
There was even to tell kind of a ancillary story, so we almost lost Evan in June of that year. I think it was June 27. And we were encouraged enough that I jumped on a bus with a bunch of real estate people and went down to the Tigers game. And then after the Tigers game, we're sitting in that in a bus at that Eastern Market, and we were just stuck there. I mean, traffic, but I'm getting terrible calls from the hospital.
Oh my gosh!
And I'm 3 hours out, and I'm starting to freak out. Like
totally helpless.
My kid is maybe slipping away, and I'm sitting here on this bus in Detroit. Like, oh,
yeah. Wow.
Well, about 4 or 5 years after that, I was down there for a real estate conference, and I hopped on a different kind of bus for just a tour of Detroit. First time I'd been back to the Eastern Market. And we're just driving through Eastern Market. I'm like, I got to get out of here. I'm shaking.
Wow.
I'm like, this is PTSD stuff. I got to go. Like, I was about to climb off that bus and just walk back to the Ren Center. So some of that stuff gets in your, you know.
Oh, for sure.
So
yeah. What couple of questions come to mind. What is Evan's official diagnosis?
All of them?
Or yeah, what are some of the main ones? I realized when I said that. And I was like, real, I was like, which one do you want?
Let's see. I think developmental delays, which I think would be described with the word global, meaning
global, yep.
Everything. You know, some intellectual disabilities. We recently had him go through the battery of tests for autism. And I think, and I realize there's probably a high percentage of people that watch this are probably dealing with autism. So I don't want to talk flippantly, but like, he's always had some of those unique traits. He's always had a little bit of the, you know, the Rain Man qualities, little obsessions, little things that need to be exactly just so, that I bet a lot of autism parents would recognize.
Right.
But we always thought, you know, he's got so much else going on. We kind of don't need to find out about that diagnosis until we need to find out. And we thought if there was some day where, you know, maybe he could get some additional educational benefit or something with that diagnosis, we'd get it then. So we had those tests, I'd say, in the last month or two. And the results aren't very fresh in my mind, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer.
Yeah. Well, that also opens the door to some different therapies too.
Right.
Which is good.
That was our
thinking.
think
ABA is a good one.
Yes. Yep. We've talked about that. So to this day, he's still tube fed.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
Yep. We think he could eat some more things, but it's kind of like he needs to want to. So he'll have pudding and applesauce. The kids at school love giving him pudding and applesauce, and he'll eat ice cream around here. He'll drink from his water bottle. But he's also got this little ritual with his tube feeds that, he participates in it. He largely feeds himself.
Wow.
He pushes that whole syringe plunger thing in. He pushes the top part down.
Really?
Yeah. And then he and mostly my wife, you know, do the rest of it. And then to be as gross as possible, he still poops in a diaper, which is about as awesome as it sounds. So that's another thing where, so bathrooming is still an issue.
For sure.
And so, you know, you've met him, and like what I tell people that haven't is I say, well, he's very friendly. He's very chatty. To the stranger, I say, well, or to the person who hasn't met him, I say, well, you know, you might understand a third of what he's saying.
Right.
Sarah in particular, and then myself to some extent, understand more, but like I still don't get everything he's saying. ask for clarity a lot. And
it was really cool. We were at the Christmas event at the farm, and you know, that you had almost your whole crew there. But it was really cool. I saw a side of Evan. He just was like so concerned with this baby that was crying, you know, and he like grabbed my hand, pulled me over there. I don't think the mom wanted, like, you know, all of us to come over, but you know, at those events, I think there's an understanding.
He loves babies. When another kid is hurt, he gets very concerned about him. So he gives love and he gives care, probably because he got it so good. And I'm not tooting my horn. I'm talking about all the medical professionals and certainly my wife and other people that just loved him so well. That, you know, he is who he is now, and he's very social and very caring and very sweet. So,
wow. How do you handle all the medical side of it? Because I saw he had a trach for a while.
Yeah,
he's got a feeding tube. You know, all the NICU stuff isn't easy, but like
when he came home, life was probably maybe arguably worse for a year. You know, so that other kid, toddler, was growing, and what we needed in-house nursing. And this is, you know, we're still living in the same 1,700 square foot house in the city. And fortunately, we have a bedroom on this main floor and a half bath. So it worked out that these nurses could come into the house. They'd have a bathroom they could use. They'd have what was set up as his bedroom at the time. He had ventilators and all the, he was, you know, direct feeding equipment. So like they weren't doing the syringe and plunger at the time. It was a little machine that just dripped his food into him.
Was he on a vent?
Oh yeah. For at least a year. So
now, was that just at night, or was that all the time?
Well, at first it was 24 hours. And then you would essentially test him a very structured way. You'd try to take him off it for a period of time. And he had some time off it when he was in the NICU. Excuse me. So they were testing him there, and you'd have sometimes nasal cannula, and then other times rely on the trach, which he got on my 37th birthday. That was a hell of a birthday.
Wow. Happy birthday.
And so he had, you know, that was all here. But, you know, the trach sometimes pops out. We have a generator outside that, you know, people in the city don't have generators, you know, we do, because if the power goes out, you got 45 minutes. And that happened once. So we, early on, before the generator, power went out, and we quick hightailed it to my sister's place on Cascade Road, where we could plug them back in. And then in the city, that quite honestly, probably people watching this that are more rural and stuff, but power doesn't go out a ton. And so one dirty little secret is that the social workers from the hospital will call the utilities, and they'll say, you know, this kid's going home on a ventilator. And so we'd get like a priority status. So if the power ever went out, we were the first one on. Some of our neighbors benefited tremendously from this.
You can actually call and tell them that.
Yeah. So the hospital did it for us.
Did that. Yeah.
And you never, ever call back to say that the ventilator's gone. You know, you let them figure it out.
Yeah. No.
So, you know, he had that ventilator was probably around for, I'd say, 2 years. He wasn't fully reliant on it. And then we had like these travel vents, and I don't mean travel like, hey, let's go to Disney. I mean, like, if you're going to an appointment, we got to have something you can throw over the shoulder and put in the car. So we still have oxygen equipment in the basement. We don't have like that concentrator that we used to have. There's a whole bunch of things that you wouldn't even know about. We had all that. So Yeah, eventually he weaned off of that. The nursing eventually stopped. Having nurses in your house, I think there was a period of 24 hours, but it probably slid back to like 16 and 8. So at least we could sleep. But it's weird. I mean, there's another person in your house,
Yep.
And a toddler. So, and even there, you have your favorite nurses and your less favorite, and sometimes you'd find them asleep. One low light was like his trach came out, and the nurse thought she put it back in, but only put like half of it back in. And we found that.
Oh boy!
So he hopefully, he kind of hung on during that little episode.
Wow.
Sarah had some scary moments where she just had to react and boom, pop it back in.
For sure.
So I don't remember exactly. In fact, what I should have done here is looked at some of the old photos and looked for some of the landmark moments. But probably at 3, he had that trach closed.
Okay.
Something like that. Or for a while, they keep it open just in case. Then eventually they'll have a little procedure to close it. So that happened eventually, and
man,
life went on.
Yeah, with all that you have gone through, very, very traumatic for sure.
Yep.
Very, very stressful. Just like I'm imagining so much anxiety just day to day. Like your levels, you and your wife, your levels of stress and anxiety have got to be like through the roof. So how was your relationship with Sarah? Was that like, how did you guys manage that? Because that is a strain.
The true answer is I don't know. Probably a God thing, because there definitely is the opportunity to get closer or further in that scenario. We definitely got closer.
Good.
We needed each other. I mean, it was as simple as that. And we loved our kids. I mean, there's wasn't much else to that thought process. So, the care that she's given this child of ours, holy cow, like, oof. So, that will endear you to somebody for the lifetime that you already promised,
Yep.
So, that was never a question. I think we were aware that, boy, this is the kind of thing that could, damage you if you weren't careful. But I think we had enough, a little more mature. I was, I think, 36 when this happened, what makes her 33, 34. So we weren't, young kids or anything. And probably the anchoring or stabilizing effect of having a gorgeous 2-year-old in the house too, So there was not a choice. It was just, that's what it is. So,
are you good at are you good at sharing how you're feeling with other people than your wife? Like, do you have guys?
She's introverted. I am extroverted. So I think I've had 10 or 20 times the opportunity to share with people about it. One interesting decision I made early on, during those first few days in the NICU, is like, so now we're getting phone calls from lots of family members, and we're repeating, pardon my English, the same shit over and over and over. We're saying, hey, here's how the day went. Here's a bunch of medical mumbo jumbo that you don't understand either, because we just heard it for the first time. Well, what does that mean? And so immediately we got kind of weary of that. So we needed to shrink that communication. So I went to Facebook, and then what happened, his life became a little bit of a phenomenon. I just went day 1 in the NICU, and I wrote out a little, just a synopsis of what happened that day. Sometimes I'd add comment. Sometimes I'd be more detailed. Sometimes I'd be like, hey, it was a good day. We're relieved. See ya. Boom.
Yeah.
But then on other days, I'd go into some detail. And what happened is people around the world started following this. Now, they all had some connection to us in some way. I mean, they weren't strangers. We had people in Europe and South America and Australia that were literally checking in on these updates. And so once I committed, like I had to keep going. There were 311 of these.
Did you did one every day?
Every day.
Stop it.
Every single day. So they all now pop up in my Facebook memories all the time, which is wild.
Do you have those printed somewhere?
I'm sure they could be found. You know, I mean, they're there.
Man, that's incredible. You're just like, I'm just gonna post every single day.
Just something like as little as, hey, it was a low key day. Those are the best. Some rest. Sarah got some rest. Thanks for checking into us. Every once in a while, I'd say, hey, so-and-so, hey, Andy, nice running into you today. Or visitors, because we could have visitors, and that was its own thing. But I just kept going with that. And over time, I really felt loved by people, hundreds to maybe low thousands of people that were everywhere. They were following my kid. Like, this wasn't me or some weird ego thing. Like, they're cheering for Evan. So there were people sometimes, like, it would get to be 10 or 11 at night, and I'd get a text like, oh, do you have today's update?
We're waiting. Can't go to bed.
Yeah. Like on Tuesday, I might have done it at 6 p.m. like from the hospital, but like maybe on Wednesday things go a little different, and so people would wait for it. It was nuts. It was bananas.
It is wild.
I mentioned our visitors, so obviously we tried to limit them somewhat. But one of the most stunning things I've ever seen is the impact this would have on some of our friends. Like, they'd come in, they'd have no idea what they were getting into. They'd see this little baby, they'd see the whole setup. A lot of the women that were already moms would just start crying. And a lot of I grew up around all these big tough Dutch dudes, and like they'd get in there and you'd see their face change, and they'd start to react, and they're like, like, I can't believe this. And so sharing him in that way, we didn't do a ton of it, but it was kind of special. And it sort of, there was something we kind of got from, I guess we benefited in a way from people seeing how this really was, because it was the closest thing you could get to relatable. I mean, so that was pretty interesting. Just watching him like melt people, So
it's amazing what a little baby the size of a football, will do for somebody. Like, babies in general, always. I feel like now that I'm older, I just cry. Like, I just like, babies are awesome, and I think having a child with disabilities just breaks you anyways. So I was just like, I just cry. It's not a big deal. Just let it happen. But that's awesome. What about your faith? Did that change at all through this process? I mean, I don't know where you were before Evan, but how did that take shape?
It's a great question. I'm not going to have the most comprehensive answer, but like, we both grew up in the CRC, the Christian Reformed Church, and like, there's a lot of young people that grow up in that, particularly at GR Christian, they talk about how they're, raising people to live in a secular world. So a lot of us drift. So through my 20s, like especially pre-marriage and stuff, I sort of tried to maintain like some church connection, but admittedly that was real half-assed. And then
gotcha.
Like, when I got married and moved back to Grand Rapids, we were going to Mars Hill, so at least there was there was a effort and some sort of community. It's hard to do that in a place that big. But it was, it was during the Rob Bell heyday, and it was kind of fun. Of course, that all ends when you have a child in the NICU, because every Sunday morning is the NICU.
But you're also seeing miracles.
Yeah.
I mean, what were you like? Do you feel like you were talking to God more during those
we
times?
Received so many prayers, people just telling you they're praying for you. Sometimes they'd want to do that with you in person. Like at the time, it was like, just let's let them, and let's suck it up and be the ones that everybody prays for, and just let them. So I didn't use a lot of mental, emotional energy on that at the time. I wasn't digging into the Bible. Was I questioning a lot of things? Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, how does this happen? Why us? You do all that, but you got a toddler at home. You got a kid clinging to life. I had to be at work. Like, there wasn't a lot of time to question or, So, over time since then, like these days, I'm a daily Bible reader.
Oh, that's cool.
But, that's in an app that we didn't even have that in 2013, or at least not the current version. And so at the time, it was just like, it was more like we would certainly welcome and allow ourselves to be the ones that are prayed for. And you just got to kind of let it. Something I wanted to bring up is like, maybe this, if there's a couple of parents out there that find themselves in a typical, or not typical, nothing typical, a similar situation, we had to sort of persuade ourselves to let people take care of us. And this is, I think, worth hearing for somebody that this happens to down the road. Like, we have some good friends. The husband in this family is a guy I've known since I was 6 months old. He's a doctor, and they had young kids, so his wife was very much in homemaking stage, and she knows who she is. She might be watching this. She was amazing. She would go. He was a doctor. Money was not an issue. She would go to Costco or whatever and just load up on all the staples for us, and do it with enough frequency that we kept stock there. I mean, there was always milk for. We didn't have to be running around to the grocery store. We would bring all the basics over, and I noticed Sarah almost getting like resistant, like, oh, I feel bad. She's doing all that for us. But it really made a huge difference. And at one point I stopped Sarah from kind of the resistance. And I said, look, you need to see her face when she brings this stuff over. She's coming to our door with all this stuff, and, we're trying to thank her. And we can never, ever, ever thank this beautiful human enough. But like, I could tell it meant so much to the other mom that I'm talking about. It's like, we got to let her, like, money isn't the issue with them. They can afford to take care of us. They want to take care of us. Let them take care of us. It does take some swallowing of your pride or whatever.
It does seem like that's your natural reaction. Be like, no, you know what? We're good. We've only been in the NICU 9 months. We're totally fine.
We got it. We got this. We did some of that, but I
definitely want to go grocery shopping after I've been in the hospital for 8 hours. I was hoping to do that.
Yeah, I just had a friend. Some milk. I really want to run through Fulton Heights Foods on the way home from the NICU. That sounds awesome.
Exactly.
Whiskey, milk, let's go.
The cashier's like, I'm not even gonna.
Oh, it's the whiskey milk guy.
I just had a friend I talked to who, you know, really, really early, baby born in the NICU. And I don't know why I asked. I said, are you allowing people to help you?
Yeah.
He's like, no, we got people wanting to bring us meals and give us gift cards, but we're fine. I was like, man, you just gotta say yes. Let people do it. You could have a freezer, put the food in the freezer, put the gift cards in your car. Like, let them help you. I don't know why. Like, for me, that was so hard. And then it just clicked. Like, okay, you can't do it without help.
If there's some younger parents that see this and need a takeaway, it's that let people care for you. Don't try to do this on your own.
Oh my gosh, man. So you had said that you were going to therapy for a little bit.
Yep.
And again, if I were to think about myself, I used to think therapy was stupid. Sure. Because I didn't want to go sit on a couch and have somebody say, how does that make you feel?
Right.
You know, like, why don't you feel your feelings? Like, I didn't want to hear all that. Yeah. And Laura and I have always been big advocates for counseling, for therapy. And we kind of view it as like a car, right? You don't drive your car to the mechanic when it's on fire. Right. And say, I don't know, man, I don't know what happened, but can you do anything? We're like, no, it's on fire. It's like, you take it, we go get oil changes. I don't know anything about oil. It just, the car tells me to change the oil. I'm kind of old school, so I still do it. I do it with the kids, but we do oil changes whether we think we need them or not. Right. Yeah. And we kind of view counseling like that. Like, we go, when we moved over here, we wanted to find a counselor and therapist to help us, because what dads like us and parents like us go through is not normal, and you have to work through it. What was it for you that kind of got you into therapy?
Well, there were two parts. The first time around, we did it wrong. Like, when you're in the NICU, especially when you're there that long, you're surrounded in social workers, and we were legitimately feeling blessed and cared for and comforted by like the families and the friends. So I remember at one point, probably 3 or 4 months in, a social worker comes and says, hey, do you want to talk to anybody about things like PTSD? And we're like, no, like, we're good.
Look at us.
I was like, PTSD, like, you think of Vietnam, right?
Yeah,
you think of,
sure.
And I'm like, PTSD. Well, by year 2, when he's home, I mean, I had moments that were like straight out of Hollywood, where I'd be in bed at night, and then all of a sudden, wham, I'm sitting up, sweating, shaking, going. So for a second, you'd relive the whole thing. And I'd have to be like, I'd have to calm myself and say, okay, my kid is downstairs. He's got a nurse. So there were a lot of flashbacks, and I bet those like pop up in bed alarm. I bet that happened a good 10, 12 times.
Wow. Were you freaked out?
Oh yeah. I mean, I fortunately find the wherewithal to be like, okay, that was just some kind of flashback. Like, all right, we're under control. Try to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
So that it sounds like something out of a movie, but that was real. Probably when he was around 5. So say 2018 or so. Our life started to return to some version of normal. Not everybody's version of normal, but ours. So like, we could remember what a huge deal it was when we could just put Evan in the car and the 4 of us could go out to dinner. It was so weird. We met some friends at the store, the cheesiest palm tree. They pull it off. I mean,
yeah,
it was my little plug for the store, but
I know what you're talking about.
But it was just like a whole different life to be able to take this kid. And then, eventually things like we went to Chicago for a weekend. Travel. So we started to travel on airplanes, and
wow.
There's old dad with these, like I had to give them I started packing really light, like if we're going to be there for a week, I got 4 pairs of underwear and 4 t-shirts, we're going to wash because it needs to be this big, because dad's got that shaky vest. The parents of children with like cystic fibrosis will know what I'm talking about. They would strap it on a kid and it shakes them.
Yep.
Evan does not have CF, but that's who that's meant for, and it helped him. And then that oxygen condenser thing, concentrator or whatever it is. So picture me in an airport. I got those 2 things. Jeez. And so we try to get everybody else through security, and here's old dad with these things, and they're wiping it down like it's a bomb.
Yeah, they're putting their rubber gloves on.
Yep. And so there were times where it's like there's me there. I would send them ahead. They're slow anyway, especially with Evan. Like, you guys go ahead. And there a couple times, like sprinting to the plane, pulling these things on wheels. One time they were closing the door, and it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Not okay.
Because I didn't have anything else. I mean, I probably had 2 pieces of specialized medical equipment and my wallet and my phone. And that's it.
Jeez.
So back to the therapy track. By 2018, I was working in a specific real estate office, and I was the manager there. So I had this office at the back of the office, and life was a little bit more normal. So like the best examples were like after a weekend where we could have some fun, maybe there's some drinks, and which changes your body chemistry anyway. But like you'd roll into Monday and it's like, wow, you could say, well, we had a pretty nice, fun, normal weekend, had a little fun. But on some of those Mondays, I'd be sitting there in my office frozen, just completely frozen. I'd have to get a Post-it note and write down like what had to get done. I mean, a Post-it note. I mean, that
wow,
write that much on it. And I had to like deliberately, like one thing at a time, work through it. And I'm like, why am I so slow? And so a friend of mine referred me to a trauma therapist. And there we did, it was actually a woman I knew from my gym was my therapist. She really created like finding things in the body. So like, I'm a big, tall guy. I'm broad. I carry everything in my gut. And when you've been under duress for that long, you don't even notice.
Yeah.
So, I read some books on trauma, and she worked me through these like exercises where we were trying to like separate, that's a chemical reaction going on in my gut. I'm not actually where I was 5 years ago. My kid is thriving, but we carry that. And like parallel to it was in school, they teach you fight or flight, right? Those are your stress reactions. When you have a child in the NICU, another one at home, fighting's not a good idea. I'm not going to say I didn't go looking for one a couple times. Did not succeed. Flight is not a good option. This is not time to leave. And nobody talked about freeze. So in the animal world, it's fight, flight, and freeze. And it started to become clearer that when I was like paralyzed like that, emotionally, that was the freeze response. So I had to kind of work through that. And I sort of stay on that topic now. Like even now, some meditation things or whatever, I focus on that chemical reaction that we have in the body Some people carry stress in their shoulders or their whatever. For me, it was always a gut thing. And I am able to sort of say, okay, what's going on in my gut now is not happening in real time. Like my gut is just going back in time to that terrible moment. It's not happening now. And it does allow you to sort of separate yourself from that physical experience, that chemical reaction, and sort of like, I would say down-regulate your emotional system.
Right.
So therapy played a role in that. There have been a couple other times where I think that first year when he was still in the hospital, the real estate company that I was working with, a couple of the leaders would go see sort of a therapist / business coach.
Okay.
And they'd send me, and I was not prepared. I was a mess. I'd just go in there and weep, and it was not, I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And then years later, I went back and saw that same therapist, different from the female trauma therapist that I had mentioned, this other guy. And I just couldn't break through anything with him. So like I was just bumping up against a wall. Like, man, sometimes I feel like crap and I don't know what to do with it. So mixed results. I would encourage everybody who finds themselves in any type of situation with any similarity to please get some counseling, get something.
Right. It sounds like you're in a lot better place than you were, 6-7 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think you could have just figured it out on your own, or do you think you had to get help? And I'm hoping you say you had to get help.
I can't imagine not having gotten some help.
Okay.
I don't know where I'd be with that.
Yeah.
Not to scare anybody. Is it the kind of thing that could ruin you? Yeah.
Right.
It could just destroy you. And there is therapy. There's, just like I said, like letting people care for you, let people pray for you, let them do you little favors that are just going to make your day go easier if you find yourself in the situation.
For sure.
So,
man, what do you think? And I think this will be probably one of the last questions. What do you think in terms of disability? And at just 12 years old, Evan's 12.
yep.
So you're kind of like, to me, you would be on the more veteran side of disabilities. What are one or two of the main things that disabilities has taught you over the years?
We probably all take for granted our healthy children's status to some extent. When little things aren't so simple. It's one example would be like the effect on our social life. Like we would get invited to things, we just couldn't go, and every once in a while somebody would say, "Oh, just get a sitter." It's like,
yeah.
Well, you got any? All of our sitters for years were nurses. They had medical training and skills, and we're past that now. Where like some of the our sitters now tend to be some of his classroom aides from school.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, he knows them. He's
comfortable. They're with him all day. They know him, and they don't have to do. There's no medical intervention. There's no.
Right.
He can be with them a couple hours. It's just like being with them at school. But we noticed over time, like people used to want to invite us to stuff. We just couldn't go. So I've kind of largely had my own social life, which has simply worked. I mean, it's worked out that like, I don't mind going to things by myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I work in the real estate industry that has all kinds of social events. And for that first year or two, I was pretty deliberate. Like I went to as many as I could.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I would be there at the beginning, and I'd be the first one to leave. And I kind of got the reputation for that. Like, oh, VanderWoude, he makes it to every party, but yeah, he's the first one to like have one drink, shake a bunch of hands, stop on the way out to wash all that off, go home or go to the NICU again.
Right.
Or like I had a softball team, and I'd go to the hospital and visit them in my softball uniform, and then go play a game, and sometimes stop back there after.
Right.
And then, you know, meet the softball team for a beer. Like, so our social lives became very different.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, I wandered off the original question, but, you know, those were some of the things that, like, the organization that's your organization that's brought us together. Oh man, what a relief. Like I can be there. I've only been a few times, but,
yeah,
there's something about walking in and like, I recognize these guys because like they've been somewhere that I've been.
For sure.
So that's been great. Like you can talk pretty freely at those things and kind of be understood. And yeah, I've noticed when some of the younger guys who have kids that are like 2 years old, you know, they sort of lean in a little bit, and I feel like I can actually relate to them. So
yeah, that's awesome. And it's rare that it's rare that like anyone gets together with that many people who have so much in common. Not that everyone can totally understand everything, but I mean, man,
right.
they all have kids with disabilities and all can relate on some levels. Huge.
And some of them have it worse than we have had it. I guess that, you know, one thing I'm thankful for, that, like I know is a issue for your family, is we don't have to deal with mobility. So Evan's pretty mobile.
Yeah.
You can throw him in a regular car. He loves to travel. He can take him to a baseball game. He just walks around, you know, so that's been a blessing with all the things that he has had to overcome, is at least,
for sure,
we haven't had to get specialized vehicles and all that kind of stuff. So we're at least free of that complicating factor or whatever. So
yeah, because I imagine the first year of his life, you never thought, oh, he's going to be running around, you know, mobile to the.
We didn't know what to think.
Yeah. So to have that,
and this might be sobering for some to hear, but I think I went a number of years kind of hanging on to a belief that his life might be normal one day. And, you know, I think post like COVID years, I started to sort of accept like, okay, this is it. He's going to have some things going into adulthood, or we're going to have to take care of him. So fortunately, those realizations kind of came in over time, so they weren't so abrupt and brutal. And you can accept something like that more slowly. But you know, I know there's people that can relate to that. Like, I'm 48. A lot of my childhood friends are starting to become empty nesters. It's like their kids have gone to college, and fortunately they get it. They're like, this guy's never going to be an empty nester, or not, at least on a very, very different timeline, or different, you know, different scenario.
Right. Man, you and your wife are incredible for all that you've done and you've gone through. And I think the example that as a dad, being there, sticking around, not running off, not giving up. I mean, that's so great, because there's so many times, you know, where the easy thing to do is like, I'm done, you know, and you and your wife have chosen to stick with it. And I think that's awesome. I think that's so cool. I mean, 12 years, and you're doing great. So thanks for your example in how to do this. I'm not saying you're perfect. Calm down. But I'm saying you're doing a lot of things right that are encouraging, and I think you've given some good insight for a lot of dads. So
well, much credit to you and your wife and all the things that you're doing for all these families. I never would have met you if you weren't doing your thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. How did you hear about Certain Hope Community? Do you remember?
It had to be through social media, or maybe somebody said, "Hey, check that out," and then we would sort of try to find it on social. And then it took us a little bit to kind of get into the rhythm. Like I think I told you recently, like first couple events, I'd find out afterwards.
Yeah.
There was an event. How would it gone?
Makes me so mad.
And then somehow we figured that out, and now I'm especially those dad's nights, I'm going to try to do, as much as I can.
It's
good.
I love that you're there.
And I think I might be good for them.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
I'm one of the older guys around there. And not that I'm the most normal person in the world, but if they can sense a little bit in, then if, or if any of those young guys ever needs to just call me and talk,
Yeah. You're very approachable, easy to talk to, for sure.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your time. I know you are a busy guy, and getting an hour is not an easy thing, but I appreciate you getting on here with me. It really means a lot, and I'm excited to get to know you more in the future. I feel like we're just getting started. So this is great. So thanks for
it's been a pleasure getting to know you. It's been a pleasure doing this. If there's somebody out there that needs to hear it, you can do it. There's people out there that want to help. There's people like Andy. I guess there's people like me. But lean into it wherever you need to, and it's for your kids, man. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Have a good night.